actively with the past. Let it resonate in us so that we do not walk that path. It is our responsibility to never and not to deny the cruel truth that millions of Jews and the ill and homosexuals and trade unionists were tortured and killed. Let us learn from history and carry the lessons from the past into the present and on into the future. Let us see that there is far more that unites us than that which divides us, and that we are better together. Let us not slide into silence. Let us look, let us see, let us act for the common good. Building bridges between the memories of others and ourselves. Building bridges between history and hope. Let us all say never again. Today and every day, let us choose love over hate, unity over division, and stand against all forms of prejudice. If you are able, please let us stand for 1 minute. Loving God, we come to you today with heavy hearts, remembering the 6 million Jewish souls murdered during the Holocaust. We recognize destructive prejudices which drive us apart. We remember. We lament. We pray for forgiveness. Help us to see that we are all the same, equally precious, one human family. Help us to work for a better, kinder future when we are all free to live in peace, in unity, and in love. So be it. Amen. Thank you. Members, please raise your hand to indicate when you wish to speak, and you'll be operating your own microphones. If you're unable to hear, please indicate to the bench. This meeting is being live streamed and we'll be using the electronic voting system with the consoles in front of you. So when a vote is called for, they will light up, and remember it is on the left is for, abstain is in the middle, and against is on the right. Or we can vote by general assent. Speeches will be timed at 4 minutes, other than in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 15.5. And you will be given a 30-second warning before your time is up. Members may only speak once on each item, except in the circumstances as set out in Procedure Rule 15.6. If you are making a point of order, please be clear about which rule or law you think has been breached and how, and wait for agreement before you proceed. Please note that electronic devices should only be used for the purpose of this meeting and provided they are not distracting to any councillor. If the meeting continues beyond 9 p.m, let's hope not, I'll ensure there's a brief comfort break at an appropriate point. We have a lot to discuss tonight, so may I politely request that we keep things focused and speak only to add something new or necessary. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Katie, are there any?
I've received apologies for absence from councillors Wicks, Lawton, Morrison and Clark. Are there any other apologies? Councillor Austin.
Councillor Rowleen, Councillor Staunton and Councillor Atkins. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item number 2, the minutes. The minutes were held on, the minutes of the council held on the 2nd of December, and the extraordinary and adjourned meetings held on 10th of December have been published online and circulated. I move approval of the minutes. Do I have a seconder?
Please to second, Madam Mayor.
All agreed. Thank you.
Sorry, Madam Mayor. On page 8, could you correct Farnham residents to Farnham residents? It's a place where you live, a residence is, and rather than person. Thanks.
Thank you. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any? No. Item 4, announcements. I have one announcement. It is about Fiona Cameron. Fiona Cameron was with Waverley for 16 years, starting out as a Democratic Services Officer and working her way up to Democratic Services Manager and finally Governance Officer before retiring in October 2023. She was a keen walker, often going abroad to walk 100 miles, and could often be seen at lunchtimes doing exercises outside these offices. She was well known and highly regarded by both members and colleagues across Waverley Borough Council. And her passion and commitment and professionalism will be remembered by all who had the pleasure of working with her. So let us stand for another minute to pay respect to Fiona Cameron and to those who have died unexpectedly and suddenly and violently. Luis Gabriel Gembes, Renee Good, and Alex Pretty. May they rest in peace and rise in glory. Thank you. Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, members, and good evening, members of the public. A few short announcements. The very first is a constitutional duty to inform council, as I've already informed executive, of two minor changes to the executive. Councillor Juice is now the portfolio holder for environment and sustainability following Councillor Williams stepping down. Thank you again, Councillor Williams, for your service since 2019 in that role, and I welcome Councillor Juice to this new role. I have also adjusted ever so slightly some of the roles within the executive, predominantly the role of deputy leader. Councillor Liz Townsend now holds the role of deputy leader, and I want to again thank Councillor Fairclough for all of his work over the last year and a bit in that role, and welcome Councillor Townsend to her new position. A few other short updates. First of all, on LGR, the first meeting of the voluntary joint committee for West Surrey took place in January at Woking Borough Council. Much of it was the sort of perfunctory committee kick-off that you would expect, but there were a number of key issues raised that members of the committee believed to be missing from the agenda. One being a baseline finance assessment for West Surrey. As you can imagine, that's something that the Shadow Authority is going to need, considering a 5-to-1 ratio of debt totaling about 4.2 to 4.8 billion, depending on how you calculate it. And at the moment, we're also pressing for all of the budgets within from councils within West Surrey, including the county, to produce a longer-term, medium-term financial strategy. Every single one of those districts and boroughs within Surrey have done that. The county is at the moment steadfastly only producing 1 year of budget, which is slightly difficult when it comes to forward planning. Finally, Madam Mayor, two very short items. Very pleased to join you this morning for the Holocaust Memorial Day commemoration here in this room in the chamber. There will be some people who wonder why we do these things, and I have had, over the past 6 years as a councillor, at least 2 residents tell me that the Holocaust did not happen. Followed by a number of anti-Semitic remarks. And whilst I acknowledge those to be an incredibly small minority in places like Waverley, they remind me that there are people who believe that events like that simply did not exist. And therefore, I am very pleased to remind people of these things and remember myself as we did this morning. And finally, just to comment on Fiona Cameron, I think she was the first officer here that I met when I was elected. When I became deputy leader and then leader, she would know very well as soon as I walked out of my office, I was going to ask her some random constitutional question and would usually be very eager to discuss it before we baffled many officers and members around us by speaking in West Wingisms. And she was a very dedicated officer, and she was at almost every count that I can remember as well. So very sad to see her pass away. I believe it was on Christmas Day as well, and only so having relatively recently resigned from the council, retired from her council duties. Myself and the mayor will very likely be attending her funeral at Woking Crematorium on the 2nd of February. And with that, Madam Mayor, I shall hand back to you because we've got plenty of business to get through. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The monitoring officer was notified that the Surrey Police and Crime Panel was co-opting Councillor Austin as a Conservative group representative from Waverley Borough Council in order to address the proportionality on that panel, and she has used her delegated powers to make that appointment accordingly in consultation with group leaders. And secondly, Councillor Weldon has resigned from the ONS committee, which leaves a Liberal Democrat vacancy, which we anticipate will be filled shortly.
Thank you. So we move to agenda item 5, which is questions by members of the public. There are 4 questions from members of the public and 1 statement. Are we agreed to take these as read in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 11.3 and move to supplementary questions? Thank you. So in turn, is Daniel Kutzel present to ask a supplementary? No. Helen Grant? No? Thank you. Andrew Bolton?
Yes, Madam
Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Bolton. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not sure if it's going to be a pleasure always to come to the council. My supplementary, given the costs and the officer time which has been expended, what, if any, is the additional revenue raised from council tax, or has the whole exercise been a waste of money?
Thank you, Councillor Merriweather.
Well, as I said, Ed, and it's a pleasure to have you here, Mr. Bolton. Thank you for your follow-up. The key word in all of this is voluntary. It's not a mandatory charge. We're not levying anything. It is voluntary. So it relies on the goodwill of the Band H Council taxpayers who volunteer to contribute voluntarily to the into the scheme. So we have had some indications, and I'd be happy to. I think they're rather in. I think they're in the public domain, so I'm happy to dig those out and send them to you. They're indicative, of course, because it's voluntary. Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
glad to hear that you're going to make them publicly available.
Thank you, Mr. Bolton.
Yeah, they are already publicly available.
John Hemmings, do you have a supplementary? Yes, you too have 3 minutes.
To the council, my supplementary question is, can the council provide more detail in terms of the timing of when these units will be occupied, and to explain perhaps some reason for the delay and the lack of information? Thank you.
Councillor Crowe?
I can't really, no. I think the answer is in the first answer to the initial question, but I will check up with officers, and if there is anything else, any more information at all that I can give you, I most certainly will. Thank you for your supplementary.
Thank you. Is Ianella Emmett in the gallery? No, so we will take her statement as read also. And moving on to agenda item 6, which is the presentation of the SIL petition. Mr. Daly, would you like to present your petition, introduce your petition, and you have 4 minutes from when you start speaking.
Madam Mayor, councillors, the responsibility of standing here tonight fighting for injustice for these poor victims is nothing short of overwhelming. The impact of your debate and discussions tonight for these people facing crippling debt and the sale of their homes may be life-changing. In January 25, this council unanimously adopted a motion to implement a discretionary review in line with West Berkshire, where we are grateful to Councillor Austin and Atkins and everyone in the chamber for supporting a cross-party motion to end this injustice, a somewhat groundbreaking event. After years of what I can only describe as immense trauma, victims were given hope that justice would prevail. A victim here tonight suffered a nervous breakdown. One family here were forced to sell their home. Another family who are here, their houses on the market are well known to you, and especially the impact Waverley's lack of decision-making has had on their mental health. Many have had to borrow to pay crippling debt they would have never incurred had it not been for human error in filling in forms, which are life-changing consequences. You will never appreciate the human cost that this has cost all of us. Within days of that motion being passed, it became evident this administration had no intent of honouring the wishes of this council. A discretionary review was implemented which has such a narrow remit, a barrister reviewing each case who can only recommend a liability is withdrawn if it can be proven to be council error, and there is no appeal to this decision. After weeks, even months, no victims applied, not surprisingly. So the process was fudged and the broadest possible definition was sought that could vaguely be deemed to be council error. We're now also told that the head of planning is not required to accept the recommendation of the barrister and the ultimate decision rests with her. She has discretion. In West Berkshire, every appeal is reviewed by the head of planning and the leader. It's a very simple and very quick process. They choose not to incur the expense of a barrister whose recommendation will be black and white. Waverley's executive team then set up an internal review called the Executive Working Group, which I understand has now concluded. Based on what evidence? Not one of these victims was called to give a witness statement. You do not know who they are. You do not know anything about their experiences in dealing with Waverley. In July, we asked for an independent report calling for an open and transparent government. The motion proposed by Councillor Austin wasn't even given the opportunity to be debated before it was amended and delayed for 6 months. The public expected that motion to return to the agenda this evening. I suggest its absence speaks for itself. If you delay that request any further tonight, the elections are coming. We will not be silent. Through desperation and not being heard, we had no opinion but to raise a public petition. Standing on the streets of Godalming, Cranley and Farnham in cold, wet winter's mornings was a sobering experience. No one had a good word to be said about this council. A total breakdown in public trust. You do not represent the interests of residents. In summary, the Minister for Housing has been very clear. SIL was never intended to be used in this way. He names West Berkshire as good practice, a council using discretion to refund homeowners, and he names Waverley as a council who chooses not to. Robin, one of our victims, sent an FOI to over 200 councils, and to date, 30 councils, many of which have Lib Dem administration, confirm they show discretion to homeowners. The fact is, Waverley choose not to show discretion for unintended homeowner error. Councillors, an election is coming. You can put this to bed tonight, or rest assured, we will not be silenced. I ask you to do the right thing, correct bad behaviour and honour the residents who elected you. Thank you.
May I remind the public gallery they have to listen in silence. Thank you, Mr. Daly. Deborah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wanted to point out to members that there are no rules in the council procedure rules, particularly in relation to petitions, and therefore the Mayor has chosen to use the general rules of debate that sit under Council Procedure Rule 15, which means that she will be asking the portfolio holder to respond to the petition at the first instance. But I also wanted to point out to members that before you consider and debate this matter, I wanted to remind you that you should have an open mind when considering the matter before you. You may have had strong views and express those views in public, but you should ensure that you come to this item with an open mind and consider all the relevant factors.
Thank you. Councillor Follows.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to propose a procedural motion for a short adjournment, and with your discretion, may I outline the reasons for that adjournment?
Thank you. Yes.
If I may, on behalf of the executive, thank Mr. Daly and the petitioners for your petition. Based upon past visits to Waverley, emails to all members and your written petition, the Portfolio for Planning has drafted a provisional response pending your comments tonight. I would like to propose an adjournment for 15 minutes for Councillor Townsend to update her proposal now that we have heard in person from the petitioners after your speech. And then, of course, for Waverley Borough councillors to read and consider the response from Councillor Townsend before we enter the substantive debate. And I believe I have a seconder for this procedural motion.
Happy to second, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. All in favour of a 15-minute adjournment?
Can I make an alternative motion 5 minutes?
I think there might be a fair bit of reading, so I think it is for a 15-minute adjournment. Okay. Thank you for your patience. May I now ask Councillor Liz Townsend to respond to Mr. Daly? Thank you. You have 6 minutes.
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
What is your point of order?
Paragraph 4, part 4.1, Rule 14 of our Constitution lists 22 motions that may be brought without notice. This does not fit any of those categories. Part 4.9 of our Constitution, Annex 1, Paragraph 3 of the criteria clearly says the full council will, your petition will be debated at a meeting of the full council. It does not say we will debate someone else's motion, and it says the full council will make a decision on your petition. I therefore think that this motion is completely out of order.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As I said earlier, there are no procedure rules for dealing with petitions. And clearly the effect that members would want to have would be able to deal with a debate on the petition and put forward any motions and amendments so that you actually reach a conclusion as to any action that you want to take to support anything that the petitioners might want to expect from you. And on that basis, the Mayor has absolute discretion to waive the rules of the council procedure rules as part of the Constitution.
Thank you, Deborah. Councillor Townsend, you have 6 minutes.
Pleased to present this motion in response to the petition, and I believe I have a seconder.
Please second, Madam Mayor.
I'd like to thank Mr. Daly for presenting the petition and for your heartfelt speech. You know that I sympathise with the plight of householders who have found that they have fallen foul of the complex and inflexible nature of the nationally set SIL regulations. And you know that my concern at your own plight was genuinely felt. As you will be aware, since your petition started, a High Court judgment has been issued in the case of Mr. Stephen Luck versus Bracknell Forest Borough Council. The High Court upheld Bracknell Forest's decision regarding the loss of a self-build exemption under the SIL regulations, and Mrs. Justice Levin accepted the council's argument that there is no broad discretion under Regulation 65(7) to waive SIL liability and to agree not to collect SIL payable under the SIL regulations, and that construing Regulation 65(7) as conferring a broad discretion to waive SIL was inconsistent with the very detailed statutory scheme for SIL. And that ruling is obviously available in full online. This ruling is in alignment with the approach that this council had taken based on its professional and legal advice. And as I said, a full copy of our own advice is also available online. It is therefore clear now in law that a charging authority does not have the power to withdraw a liability notice for whatever reason they see as appropriate. And we are grateful that this point has now been clarified by the High Court. With regard to the comments referred to by Matthew Pennycook, this council has written to the Minister requesting changes to the regulations around householder applications, and we have listened with due regard to his comments in the meeting of the 15th of July, and I have read the transcript as well. We fully support his position that the government are giving very serious consideration to amending the regulations. And as members will be aware, we have requested the Minister formal government guidance to councils on this matter in the interim period of the government changing those regulations. However, whilst we support his comments, until these translate into that formal guidance from government or get moved into legislation, his comments alone hold no legal weight on how this council administers SIL. Finally, I would like to recognise the intensive work of the cross-party executive working group, and I would like to thank Councillor Paul Follows, Councillor Mark Merriweather, Councillor Julian Spence, Councillor Peter Clark, Councillor Michael Goodridge, Councillor Peter Martin, Councillor Penny Rivers, Councillor John Ward and Councillor Maxine Gale for all their hard work. We looked at the customer journey together in full, looking at past and present processes on guiding and advising applicants through and on the SIL process. And councillors recognised the considerable work that officers had done and supported the process that had been established. As I clearly stated before that cross-party working group was set up, it was never intended to be part of the work stream to investigate individual householders who might apply for a discretionary review, to ensure that the independent nature of that review was not compromised in any way. The working group also reviewed the enforcement policy, and this was adopted by the Council at the end of last year. The policy now makes it much clearer the areas where the Council is able to exercise discretion and what areas of the legislation are mandatory. The group also made a recommendation to the Executive to adopt a SIL exceptional circumstances policy in certain prescribed circumstances, and this is due to be brought forward to the Executive soon. I would also highlight that the cross-party working group had the opportunity to discuss the Luck versus Bracknell Forest ruling and recognise that this aligned with the Council's approach. It was also recognised that the Council's discretionary review was as broad as possible and did not define Council error so as not to put limits on the review, and that it was aiming to provide the optimum outcome for residents, not only to refund any SIL that had been paid, and not in all cases any SIL has been paid, but also to remove the charge on the householder's property. This is different to the West Berkshire scheme, which has been debated in this chamber at length. However, I must point out again that in our legal advice, Simon Bird states on the point of whether West Berkshire had the statutory power to introduce its scheme, and I quote, "That is a question which, from my research into the West Berkshire decision-making process, that council did not ever properly engage with. It is therefore not clear what legal advice was being relied upon by that council. However, each council must make its own decisions based on its own legal and professional advice, as we have done. As I've said many times, SIL is akin to a tax on development set by Parliament and cannot be changed. It's not a planning fee, by the way, it's not a planning fee, and cannot be changed or disregarded by collecting authorities, despite that authority perhaps holding different views, different personal views on the level of discretion that the collecting authority should have available to them. I have listened to what the petitioner has said, and the motion before us has been carefully drafted to focus on what is within this council's control and ensuring we continue to apply pressure at the highest level for the change that is clearly needed. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Follows, do you wish to speak now or reserve your
I'll reserve my right, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. 1 year ago, we proposed a motion to introduce a review in line with West Berkshire, and yet progress has been devastatingly slow. Yes, there have been isolated successes. Steve Daly has received a refund, but outside of the review scheme. A judicial review was won against Waverley in Godalming, with this council forced to pay costs and withdraw the SIL liability notice. In a moment, I'll be proposing an amendment to support this petition because many more people remain still in limbo. This process has taken 1 year to decide what no results. West Berkshire concluded 14 quickly and with no recourse from ministers or anywhere. What concerns me is the treatment of our residents. Some have had to resort to emailing all councillors to get any kind of response, left for months waiting, anxious, and in some cases just completely distressed. And alarmingly, we now know that Waverley was in receipt of an independent legal report for 14 weeks before, well, there still is no determination as yet. That is not the behaviour of a council showing concern for its residents. Where is the executive oversight, the urgency, the compassion? Our Conservative team has been working tirelessly to support the SIL and Justice Group, and so have Farnham residents and other independent councillors too. We have pushed for a change in the law. I have provided detailed evidence directly to the Housing Minister, meeting with him twice alongside our MPs, Sir Jeremy Hunt and Greg Stafford. And the Minister has listened. In response, he has publicly confirmed that SIL legislation will be amended. He has publicly highlighted Waverley as a council that has chosen not to follow the West Berkshire scheme, a scheme that has successfully refunded victims without consequence. Amendments have been tabled in Parliament by Conservative MPs and by the cross-party MHCLG Select Committee. In contrast, Waverley's committee has put in place what I believe to be a flawed scheme, which has delivered nothing to date. Followed intense scrutiny that they were forced to change an enforcement policy they've only just adopted. And as I have evidence, they have avoided scrutiny and transparent whenever possible, including quashing my July 2025 motion for an independent review of SIL practices, and which should again have come back for debate this month. Required progress updates? Well, they've not been provided. Legislative changes are coming, which will ensure this never happens again, and I expect changes that will require councils to issue retrospective refunds. I do not want our council to be known as the council which chose delay over decency. So I say to this executive and to all councillors tonight, do the right thing. Welcome an independent and open review of SIL practices at our council, especially following the judicial review finding against Waverley. So I would like to now say do it before government forces you to. And I'd like to just propose my amendment now, please. Thank you. And so my amendment, let me find my piece of paper. I would like to delete point 2 under council notes as it is obiter and not a ruling on regulation 65(7), and append the following recommendations which are being handed out now to the existing recommendations. D, that council recommends to the executive that it immediately implement the discretionary householder review and refund scheme, unanimously agreed by council on the 28th of January 2025. The review shall be based upon the West Berkshire approach, whereby homeowners who can demonstrate that they would have been eligible for SIL exemption had the correct forms been submitted are treated as if the forms had been submitted correctly. E, that council recommends to the executive that it commission, without delay, to carry out a full and independent investigation into the behaviour and practices of Waverley Borough Council's planning department concerning the issue and enforcement of SIL liability notices to homeowners. I ask that this be dealt with as 2 separate votes. First, read the deletion of point 2 and the addition of point D. And the second, read the addition of point E. Thank you.
And do you have a seconder?
I do have a seconder.
Please a second, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
What is your point of
On
order?
a point of law in reference to Bracknell Forest versus Luck, Councillor Austin has referred to the decision as not relating to regulation 65(7), which is, I believe, directly contrary to the specific ruling. I would ask the monitoring officer, before this amendment is accepted, to confirm the basis of this amendment as being valid or not.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members of the Executive Working Group have received advice from the monitoring officer in respect of the recent case of Luck versus Bracknell Forest Borough Council. So that case held that the council did not have an unfettered discretion to waive SIL collection, which is consistent with the council's approach and the previous legal advice the council has received.
We're taking another quick 2 minutes up here. Thank you. Floor is yours.
Thank you. So, I mean, my 4 minutes is over. We've just been discussing about this petition. My strong view is that we need to we owe it to this group to give them a debate on the petition. I understand that you are saying that you may want to have some comments about what your view of the legality of part 1, but that is our overriding feedback. We would like to have a debate on the petition on behalf of these residents. Thank you.
Thank you. You'd like to speak? Yeah. Before you, the monitoring officer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I have advised Councillor Austin that Part D of her amendment is not capable of being implemented by the executive because the legal advice that members have received is that this discretionary householder scheme cannot be implemented as it is in breach of legislation and subsequently case law in the case of Luckand. Yes, that's the one. Bracknell Forest Council has actually upheld that position as well. And therefore the advice, if the executive were to try to make that decision, the advice would be that it would not be a lawful decision.
Councillor Follows.
Was only to confirm if my point of order had been upheld, and it would appear it has. And I know that many will not love some of this, what's going on here, but it is my duty as leader to also ensure that Waverley act in a legal and compliant way. Sometimes we don't love that, but I must do that.
Councillor Murray, would you like to speak now or reserve your right?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If I could, yeah, it is very, very difficult and very emotional. I understand that, and lots of procedures and lots of legality in this debate, and we're all here this evening. The principle, though, is that the public are here to hear a debate about their petition. They've spent a year, maybe, I know longer in lots of cases, in bringing this, and they've got 650 people to agree with them and come along here. And these debates don't happen very often. I don't know. I've asked Councillor Ward and a few others if there's ever been a petition debate in the past at Waverley, and no one can remember ever having one. I mean, so I know this is really, really rare. So for the people sitting in there, and if I was them, I'd be sitting here thinking, what's happening? It's all getting confusing. Is it legality? We could just debate it. And if we don't agree with it, and someone stands up and said it's not legal or whichever, and everything else, that's absolutely fine. But at least we're having a debate. And the debates, the rights and wrongs of it, the legality of it, the moral courses of it, that put their point of view. That's what we're here for, to debate it on behalf of members. And we'll, at the end, it says council will make a decision. So we can have a vote on it at the end, and then we agree it. Now, looking at the second part of Mr. Daly's petition is about having an internal investigation. Now, what that internal investigation is about and how it's proceeded, and we've discussed it in July, and it would have come back, hopefully, to January. I think that is perfectly acceptable, that we should be able to discuss this in an open manner and say what we've done. There's lots and lots of things which Liz has pointed out that we've done great, and we've really improved the journey for lots and lots of people. I was hoping today, I had two scenarios written. One scenario saying we would find out, and that 2 or 3 of the people who've come forward for discretionary reviews have been successful. That's what I was hoping to hear this evening. And I was thinking, great, we don't need to have a West Berkshire style review because our one is working successfully. But we haven't heard that this evening. I can't sit here and say that it is. I would hope it is, and I really hope that what the leader said is that the evidence of council error is elastic and as broad as he can make it. So I was convinced that this is what was going to happen this evening, that we would be here sitting talking about some successes. So I'm a little bit disappointed in that. So that's the reason why I've supported the second part of to come back to a motion. So at least we can debate it in things. There's nothing wrong with debate. I don't think so. Yes, we can't agree something which is illegal. I understand that. But the second part of it, we should be able to agree. And that is why I seconded the motion. Madam Mayor, thank you very much.
Thank you. So, members, we are open to debate. Councillor,
Debating the amendment.
on the amendment. Councillor Follows.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor and members. There's a number of things that I might save until the substantive debate when I second at the end, but there's a few things I think are worth making clear now. A lot of the problems with this entire debate is that it is obviously incredibly emotive. And that's why, where possible, I've been really keen that the council and councillors try to work on the basis of established facts where we can, because it's important when we make decisions or make recommendations to the executive here that we do that based on the facts. Now, a lot of the cases that have been going through our discretionary review are, as you might imagine, quite complicated. And if they're in flight, it's very difficult. In fact, it would be incredibly wrong to comment on the discussions that are going forward now with those individuals and the status of their case, which obviously puts the executive in a little bit of a bind, because I can't tell you this is happening with a particular case until it concludes. Now, obviously, the first part of that amendment was ruled unlawful because you can't ask the executive to even consider something that we can't do, even if we wanted to. Now, I am very cognizant that members of borough councils do not enjoy the equivalent of parliamentary privilege. And so I would never accuse another borough council of acting unlawfully, unwise, or in an improper way. But I would imagine that some of the councils referenced both by the petitioner and members of this council over the last few months will be needing to urgently review their activity in the light of Bracknell Forest versus Luck. It does confirm a number of things that we knew to be the case. One being that a liability notice once issued cannot be vacated. And it's equally clear that the council is now acting to use the maximum discretion as allowed by law. Our scheme actually goes further than the West Berkshire scheme, and it does it in a legally compliant way. Now, some of the things I'm just going to mention very briefly and as quickly as I can, in regards to the comments from Matthew Pennycook, which are being treated like a minister uttering some phrases is law. I recall a number of years ago when the Right Honourable Michael Gove MP was the Minister of State for Local Government, he made comments to the effect that housing development should not take place on agricultural land. And all the emails that I got subsequently were from members of the public asking why application X, Y, or Z was happening when the minister had said so. It's obviously what's happened. Now, of course, Michael Gove never actually legislated for that. He didn't change the NPPF, he didn't do anything about it. And we're in a similar position here where the minister's comments are being treated by members of the opposition, one of which works for the MP, is being treated as law when it's in fact words that he's said. And even that isn't actually even what he said, because, of course, the leader of the opposition has injected negative tone from the minister into what the minister said. Because, of course, it went, Matthew Pennycook, MP, I forget the constituency, Mr Dillon, who he was speaking to, it was Waverley Borough, it was Waverley Council, wasn't it? And Matthew Pennycook, MP, said, yes, as an example of a local authority that is not taking the West Berkshire approach to reimburse residents. There's no negative connotation there, merely confirming a statement of fact that we're not following the West Berkshire approach. There's no comment as to the positivity of the West Berkshire approach or the negativity of our approach, merely that we are not following the same approach. So that was tone that was injected into the speech from the minister by a member of this council in order to give you the impression, members, that something was said that wasn't said. Now, I'm referencing the transcript of the discussion with the minister here, which is obviously available online for anybody to read. So whilst I'm not going to speak to the rest of the amendment in the 20 seconds I have, I would just remind members that we have a duty to act legally, we have a duty to our residents to apply as much discretion as we can, and we have a duty to act factually when talking to members of this chamber. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
In silence, excuse me. In silence.
If, Madam Mayor, I may have my final 10 seconds, I appreciate the emotion in the room. And we are doing what we can within the law to help these residents and have done so on a handful of occasions. A lot of the issues are so bespoke that they require working through. But that does not mean that Waverley can act unlawfully just because it decides to, particularly when case law has been very, very clear And I would ask you to remember that somebody who sits there in a position of working for a member of parliament and who knows what the word of a minister means, not only is telling you that that word is law when she knows it's not, but isn't even saying what the words of the minister are accurately to you. Madam Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Goodridge.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Hopefully my microphone will work all evening, not part of it. There are two things I want to particularly mention and speaking on in favour of the amendment. Firstly, I was on the panel working group, and at the last meeting, we were informed about the case of Luck and Bracknell Forest Borough Council. I didn't have the opportunity prior to the meeting, because we only got it at the very last minute, to read it, but I have read it. And in my view, and I, as a retired everything in the law, my view is that the words about not being legal to produce a liability notice was an obiter dictum and was not part of the main judgment. If it's an obiter dictum, i.e. an aside, not part of the main judgment, you're not bound by it. And therefore to suggest, in my view, to suggest that this would be illegal is not right, because it is an obiter dictum and not part of the main judgment. And therefore, I would challenge the suggestion that it is illegal to follow on the lines of West Berkshire. I mean, should be reminded that West Berkshire went first to the Planning Officers Society to get views. I don't know if we've seen, I don't think we've seen what they said to West Berkshire, but clearly West Berkshire must have followed what they were told by the Planning Officers Society and so on. The other thing that, I mean, I've been on this council nearly around 30 years, and I have to say that this is becoming an embarrassment. I see in the legal press, for example, that the headline of Waverley Sill Enforcement Under Scrutiny, and you get a quote from James Packer, who was the lead lawyer in the case brought against this council, who says, and I quote, "It is extremely concerning that a public authority can acknowledge legal errors, then double down by issuing an even higher charge on the same flawed basis. This outcome underlines the need for proper oversight of how local councils apply the SIL regime and shows that homeowners do not have to accept this kind of incorrect enforcement unchallenged." Now, I'm embarrassed that this council should get a banner headline at the end of a judicial review, and this came out in, I think it was November last year, after the working group had wound up its business. So I have to say, I support the amendment. I think it is important that we look to see if it is possible to follow the West Berkshire, and certainly we need an internal look at our practices in view of the judicial review comments that have been given by this solicitor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Weldon, and then there are a couple more. Councillor Weldon.
Thank you. The petition and the amendment and all the emails and discussions about this issue we've been through over the last several months all refer to following West Berkshire. In her observations earlier, Councillor Austin implied that by not amending in line with West Berkshire, we are somehow out of step with the rest of the country. I think that is totally incorrect. Earlier, some months ago, I tried to find out which councils have in fact followed West Berkshire's example. I found none. I have just tried again online to find examples of other councils which have done so. I find none. It would seem to me that we are not out of step. We are in line with the rest of the country in declining to follow the Berkshire example, because it would appear that we do not have that authority. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hyman.
Thank you. I'm not absolutely sure that's correct, but I don't have information in front of me now to contest it. So, but I did ask in respect to the wider issue of how we debate this matter, and we were told earlier that the mayor has the power to be able to suspend the constitution, a wide power. I and a number of others thought that that power only really applied to suspending members' rights to speak, or roughly speaking, that's what it was about. And there was no such wide power. And I did ask whether that could be checked. And firstly, so would you mind if I can get that answered first of all, before, because we may have to change the direction of the debate? Does the mayor have, is it in the constitution, the power to be able to suspend the constitution to the extent that we can basically do whatever we want? Or the mayor can.
The mayor does have the power to change the rules of debate.
Where is that in the constitution, please, so that I can check it when I get home?
That's in the council procedure rules 30.1.
Okay, thank you very much. 30.1 PR. I'm very disappointed with what's going on here, because I mean, you know, a petition comes forward and we've got to debate the petition. That should be pretty straightforward. How do we go forward from where it is? Because, you know, the what we call the SEAL victims have voted for it with their feet. For, you know, they know that what they're being told is not entirely true. We've got supposedly, from the council's point of view, from the viewpoint of say Simon Boak QC, which is the advice that Waverley have obtained, and we do know that you can pay a law to say whatever you want if you pay them enough. We are told that 30 councils are breaking the law, in effect, and they're applying a purposive interpretation, which is what all of the case law says we have to do with CIL legislation. Everybody agrees that the CIL law was never intended to capture household applications and genuine errors. So, you know, how can you not correct errors whereby, you know, from the very beginning, the first thing that people were told, and I'm quoting from paragraph 1.5 of the papers that went through in October 2018, when we adopted CIL, it stated CIL will be applied to most buildings that people normally use and where more than 100 square metres of floor space net, or a new dwelling is created, even if it's less than 100 square metres. So it does not apply to development under 100 square metres. So we can immediately turn round because people were told it doesn't apply to them if it's less than 100 square metres. Any development that started at less than 100 square metres, and there's nothing to say you could get, you could end up being caught out by having to put in section 73A applications when you make changes, or you know, you can't start commence the development of you know, commencing just a little extension, whatever it is. You know, all of these cases should be thrown out immediately. Anything where it is over 100 square metres, because if you genuinely are telling us that we have a very wide interpretation at Waverley of what a council error is, we made a mistake from the very beginning in telling people it didn't apply to them. So let's start off with that. The most important thing, I think, is that we do need to investigate and interrogate the legal interpretations that we've got here, because you know, we need to have, members need to have access to our legal team directly so that we can get answers and we can work out what the law really is, because we're sat here hearing you know, two different sides of an argument, and we never get the opportunity to sort it out. I want it sorted now. I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want any more obfuscation.
Councillor
Can we have that, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have an opportunity here to help our residents, which is why we were all elected. Or that's what we say. I've constantly asked that the enforcement be delayed until there was more clarity over this matter. all to no avail, but clarity is likely to come when the minister's statement either becomes or does not become law. I'm very sad at the attempts yet again for the executive to avoid discussing the issue. Surely, if things were going well, an independent review or investigation would be welcomed, as it would enforce the council's position and perhaps remove some of the rather nasty press. However, if as many believe it is likely to castigate the executive, then I can see why they do not really want one. I hope that the webcast is not working well, as this is the most embarrassing council meeting I have ever attended. I listened to the wise words of a former judge on the council who says that this is not a legal matter, it is something outside the main judgment, and I have great respect for his judgment. I too am now embarrassed. I find this to be a dreadful way of dealing with a highly emotional problem. To not allow the petition to be debated as our council rules clearly say it should be, I think is a disgrace. I am desolate. Councillor Goodrich has been around for 30 years. I've been around for 20. And this is the worst evening I have sat in this chamber. I will say more when we get to the main motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Councillor Williams.
As Councillor Ward just talks about the executive's attempts to stop discussion about the petition, we had a comment from Councillor Murray that said the public are here, and I quote, to expect a debate about the petition. Could I suggest that people who are here, who are people who feel aggrieved, expect a debate on the notion of civil liability notices to householders and what can be done to remedy it. And the motion that was proposed by Councillor Townsend, as it stood, gives us an opportunity to do just that. We cannot wish away legal advice or case law by deleting reference to it in a motion, which is what Councillor Austin is proposing in the amendment. There is an obstacle to doing what we might wish to do. It is a legal obstacle. It is a legal barrier. That is the advice that we have been given by professional officers. And this motion gives us an opportunity to vote to do something. The motion as it stands gives us an opportunity to vote to do something that can help, which is requesting the Minister of Housing and Planning to introduce the requisite legal changes. I would suggest that we reject the amendments and vote in favour of the substantive motion when that opportunity arises.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Barker-Lomax.
Thanks. Notwithstanding Luck and Bracknell, Parliament deliberately preserved discretionary and exceptional circumstances relief in SIL Regulation 55. Just referring to Councillor Weldon's point, there are many other councils that do apply discretionary relief, and examples include Cheshire West and Chester Council, who've published exceptional circumstances of relief policy, Newark and Sherwood District Council, who've withdrawn liability notices, East Hampshire and Islington, who stated that they will withdraw liability notices, Hounslow, Cornwall, Stroud, Havant, South Oxfordshire have reportedly applied such relief. You know, we should follow suit, in my opinion.
Thank you, Councillor Martin.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. I am really quite distressed that a year after we took a decision to act, very little has happened. And that seems to me to be quite wrong. In answer to a question that I put to the portfolio holder, which will be in our next agenda item, I asked how many cases have been brought before the process for review. It appears that 4 have been brought in so far, and 2 initial reports have been received from the independent assessor, but there has been no resolution yet. The only case that we have had resolution on is outside this entire process. And so we've had 1 which is outside the process that we have today, and we've had 2 reports from the independent assessor. And it's extraordinary now that the council received the initial report, as I understand it, in October, the 23rd of October, and here we are 14 weeks later, and that still has not been resolved. So my concern is that we're a year on and almost nothing has happened. There does seem to be something wrong with what is going on. And I think, therefore, that the amendment E that it recommends to the executive that it commissions without delay to carry out a full and independent investigation into the behaviour and practices of Waverley Borough Council Planning Department concerning the issuing and enforcement of civil liability notices to homeowners is a good one, and we should accept it, and I commend it to the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hess.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I support the amendment to the CIL levy motion that Councillor Austin has proposed, but I'd like to just put a couple of other things into the debate because it's all got very legalistic, and I'm not a lawyer. You know, the first thing that occurs to me is we're being told there's no discretion. And the fact that Mr. Daly had a refund must surely set a precedent that Waverley have got discretionary power. Yeah? What do we think? I mean, have I got a point there, or am I talking complete rubbish? And I think also, correct me if I'm wrong again, and I'd like to get a couple of answers within my three or 4 minutes, that at the moment, the setup is that householders wishing for a discretionary review have to demonstrate that there's council error. Otherwise, they don't get one. So I'd like the portfolio holder to confirm that the documentation that contained the information on the requirements that applicants had to provide and the sequence of actions they had to follow in relation to liability CIL has been changed and upgraded to make it clearer to applicants. Could that be confirmed? Is that correct? Yes, I see nodding. So as the original documentation had to be upgraded to make it clearer and more easily understood, would the portfolio holder agree and confirm that for those applicants who used the original documentation, it was council error? And therefore, regardless of where the fault lies, householders should have a full review, a full independent review, regardless of where the fault lies. Not just if the fault, I mean, we can, from this, actually say that there could easily be fault on the part of the council because their documentation was not adequate and they had to change it, to improve it, to make it clearer and more accessible. So those applicants that fell foul using the original documentation could be said it was council error. I'd just like confirmation of that point, because that would bring a lot more people into the review process. I think at the moment people are standing off, away from the review process, because they are very, very frightened that if it goes against them, they have no right of appeal. Which is pretty awful. I mean, if you're a prisoner in jail for murder, you can ask for an appeal or review, but in CIL you don't get a review, I believe. So could the portfolio holder just confirm a couple of those points for us? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hess. I have two other speakers here, Councillor Merriweather and then the portfolio holder, Councillor Townsend. And then I propose wrapping it up and going back to Councillor Austin for her right of reply, because it's been quite a lengthy debate. So, Councillor Merriweather.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The one thing I'm not going to do, as you'd probably expect, is even try to defend SIL. I think it's an absolute mess. My brain wants to say something stronger, but I know that would be inappropriate. It's the kind of thing that you get when you dispense with experts, I suppose. That's all the best that I can say. The one thing that has got clearer, though, is the legal advice. The legal advice to my layman's eyes was extremely clear when we sought it, and it's only been strengthened with the recent case. And despite all of the emotions and the sympathies, the one thing I cannot do is condone this council breaking the law. Just can't go there. I'm really sorry. I agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Williams. I'm afraid he's pretty much said much more eloquently everything that I wanted to say. The examples that Councillor Barker-Lomax listed, we have no visibility on whether they even took legal advice, let alone what that legal advice was. We've heard Councillor Austin and beg your pardon, Councillor Goodridge referred to a judicial review in this context, which is news to me. The only judicial review I'm aware of is one that discussed whether the liability for SIL transfers with the property if it's sold. I am not aware of a judicial review that has opined specifically in any case, not Mr. Daly's or anyone else's, on whether the liability notices can be withdrawn or on our powers to enforce or not. And I was very sorry that Councillor Austin in particular and Councillor Goodridge left me with the impression that they were trying to persuade me that a judicial review had opined on this. And I hope that wasn't their intention. Finally, I sat on the executive working group with Councillor Goodridge, with Councillor Atkins, with Councillor Barker-Lomax and others. Councillor Martin was there. I felt it was at times depressing to be told what the law is and what we can't do legally. But I felt that we all left with an understanding of the limits to our power that is that's put on us by these regulations, which should never have got out there. It is just a total mess, and we're the ones who are having to live with it, and this is the consequences. I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed that we've been put in this position by a government that could and should have foreseen all of these problems before they put pen to paper.
Thank you. Councillor Liz Townsend.
Thank you. Thank you. With regard to Councillor Murray mentioning about the review, having an independent review, you know, the working group has been said, you know, anyone could come in and watch that, but we did have a really thorough investigation of the customer journey, of the SIL enforcement policy, of, I mean, Councillor Barker-Lomax has mentioned about the discretionary SIL relief. That is nothing to do nothing to do with this case. Discretionary seal relief is on large cases. If you look at those councils, it may have been applied, I mean, once in their lifetime. You know, it's nothing to do with this case. And I appreciate this is a complex matter, very complex, but we are getting mixed up. And Councillor Goodridge, you only have to look at point 98, ground 2, in the judicial review for Bracknell Forest versus Luck versus Bracknell Forest. It is clear that the 65(7) does not provide an overarching discretion to withdraw. What we are talking about is liability notices. We are not talking about the council's discretion to enforce. That is completely separate, where we do have discretion. The withdrawal of the liability notice, and remember, some of these people have not actually paid seal because we have used our discretion not to make them pay. This is to get the withdrawal of the liability notice, to remove that charge on their property and give them the optimum outcome. And Councillor Goodridge recognised that within the seal working party and recognised that that is the optimum outcome for individual residents. So we cannot get confused between the discretion that we have and the liability notice, which cannot be withdrawn. And as we know, West Berkshire are not withdrawing liability notices, which is leaving residents with that issue. So I would urge councillors, the embarrassment is slightly because we cannot seem to understand the withdrawal of the liability notice and the actual enforcement of a liability of the actual amount. Please don't get confused between the two of them. This is, you know, we are not trying to avoid the issue. We are trying to meet the best outcomes possible for our residents. And unfortunately, comments by Matthew Pennycook, whilst welcome, do not change law. And, you know, the discretionary relief, that will be coming to the executive, as I have said, but I don't want to mislead anybody in this chamber that that would apply to individual residents. There are certain prescribed circumstances which are within that policy and which our planning officers explained in full to the working group that have to be applied by. Now, listen, having an internal review, I'm afraid, is going to come up with nothing. We have been acting within the law. We don't like the law. We want to change it. But that doesn't mean that we can act unlawfully as individuals. We could be personally liable. What if we get developers coming to us and going, oh, well, I want my 2 million quid that went to the schools in Farnham because I don't think I should have paid it. You know, we have to be reasonable here. There are things that we have to do that we don't always like, but we have to apply by the law. And that has been supported by the recent JR. And to remove it is, you know, to even suggest that is completely and utterly ridiculous. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Austin, you have a right to reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, thank you all for your interesting comments on this debate tonight. In summing up, I just want to return to this point that the portfolio holder and leader were silent on when they were talking about legal cases, which is this one about the judicial review brought about by a householder sill victim in Godalming. So James Packer, Director of Public Law, led the challenge after being instructed by a client who had received a sill liability notice for home modifications. His team quickly issued a judicial review, arguing the council had misinterpreted key provisions, wrongly including parts of the development that should have been excluded. The council initially rejected the challenge, but after permission was granted, conceded errors, agreed to pay legal costs and undertook to remake its decision. However, in an extraordinary turn of events, it later reversed course, not only reinstating the sill liability, but increasing the amount owed and adding further interest and surcharges. And then the article moves on to the statement, the quote that Councillor Goodridge said. For me, this highlights what I was hearing from victims all last year, personally, and it's the reason that I profoundly believe that there should be no reason why any of us would not vote for point E, which is that we need a full and open, transparent review of the historic practices of sill at our council. This is not a witch hunt. This is a call for openness and transparency so lessons can be learned. And frankly, so we can all move on. And so these people who have been hit by these charges can move on. I'd said it 6 months ago, and I passionately ask now for Councillor Townsend, it's not very nice that you're speaking over me the whole time. I don't do it to
speaking
you.
over you.
So now, so I would just say, look, I'm just going to go. Councillor Weldon asked why no other reviews are out there like West Berks. Well, the answer is simple. Because other councils have shown discretion and they have not got to the point where homeowners have been charged SIL and they have to refund them. What Councillor Heitman also rightly mentioned, other councils have used the overarching principle in their decision-making that householders should not be charged. Over 150 councils operate SIL, but only at West Berkshire and Waverley to date have we seen this clustering. That seems to point to local issues in implementation. We owe it to those residents here to ask the questions, what, if any, help did Waverley give our residents? Did we fail to support our residents? I don't think there should be a problem in us investigating that, given all the problems that we're all sat round now trying to deal with. So while you may believe point D is there are problems legally with that, that will be your judgment call. I see no reason why we can't support E. Freedom of Information report requests show every single charging SIL authority, show many councils, over 30 to date, show common sense and discretion. Now, our council does need to fix this, and I recognise the work that people are doing to do that. But we, you'll note I've not in the amendment suggested we remove Councillor Townsend's existing recommendations. If you want to write to the Minister, fine, but we've already done this months ago. We're months ahead of you. What I do know is that the majority of residents are frightened of the current appeal process, as Councillor Hess pointed out, and that it's not working. A year after, we're still not delivering for our residents. So I want to, therefore, ask for a separate vote on these two items. I'd like a recorded vote, please.
Do you have the required number of people supporting that? Thank you. So I need to ask someone to go through the vote.
Oh, I think we still have a vote on it. It's just we can choose whether to vote on
So-
me.
So the first part of the amendment that members are going to be asked to vote on is the first part of the amendment is D on the paper in front of you. So it is to delete point 2 and to replace it with D.
No, or delete point 2 and also separately to add point D.
It's to delete point 2 and add point D. Yes, that's what I said. Yeah. To delete point 2 and have point D. Yes. Yes.
So this is about deleting point 2 and adding point
D.
If members are ready, I'll call the vote. Councillor Austin.
4.
Councillor Barker-Lomax.
4.
Councillor Beeman.
4.
Councillor Busby.
Against.
Councillor Cavalieri. Councillor Coburn.
4.
Councillor Crowe.
Against.
Councillor Davidson.
4.
Councillor Denis.
4.
Councillor Deuce.
Against.
Councillor Earwaker.
4.
Councillor Fairclough.
Against.
Councillor Follows.
Against.
Councillor Gale.
4.
Councillor Goodridge.
4.
Councillor Hess.
4.
Councillor Higgins.
Against.
Councillor Hussaini.
4.
Councillor Hyman.
4.
Councillor Keane.
Against.
Councillor Keel.
Against.
Councillor Long.
Against.
Councillor MacLeod.
4.
Councillor Martin.
4.
Councillor Merriweather.
Against.
Councillor Muraleys.
Against.
Councillor Monroe.
4.
Councillor Murray.
4.
Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Reid. Councillor Ruth Reid.
Against.
Councillor Paul Rivers.
Against.
Councillor Penny Rivers.
Against.
Councillor Rubini.
Against.
Councillor Spence.
Against.
Councillor Steiger. Councillor Sullivan. For. Councillor Liz Townsend.
Against.
Councillor Philip Townsend. Councillor Ward.
For.
Councillor Weldon.
Against.
And Councillor Williams.
Against.
Have I missed anyone? Thank you. We'll just count the vote.
So 18 in favour of that amendment with 24 against, so that falls.
So you are now being asked to vote on the second part of the amendment, which is the addition of point E on the paper in front of you.
Councillor Austin.
For.
Councillor Barker-Lomax.
For.
Councillor Beeman.
For.
Councillor Busby.
For.
Councillor Cavalieri.
For.
Councillor Coburn.
For.
Councillor Crowe.
For.
Councillor Davidson. Councillor Denis. Councillor Deuce.
For.
Councillor Earwaker.
For.
Councillor Fairclough.
For.
Councillor Follows.
For.
Councillor Gale. For. Councillor Goodridge.
For.
Councillor Hess. Councillor Higgins.
For.
Councillor Hussaini.
For.
Councillor Hyman.
For.
Councillor Keane. For. Councillor Keel.
For.
Councillor Long.
For.
Councillor MacLeod.
For.
Councillor Martin. Councillor Merriweather. Councillor Mirrlees.
For.
Councillor Monroe.
Against.
Councillor Murray.
For.
Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Ken Reid. Councillor Ruth Reid.
For.
Councillor Paul Rivers.
For.
Councillor Penny Rivers.
For.
Councillor Rubini.
For.
Councillor Spence.
For.
Councillor Steiger.
For.
Councillor Sullivan.
For.
Councillor Liz Townsend.
For.
Councillor Philip Townsend. Councillor Ward.
For.
Councillor Weldon. And Councillor Williams.
For.
Thank you.
So that is 40 in favour, 1 abstention and 1 against, so that is carried.
So you're now going back to the substantive motion, which you don't include scheme.
Yes. So we now go back to debate the substantive motion, which includes E. So Councillor Follis, did you want to speak now?
I was intending to reserve. I'm hoping we've covered all the substantive points,
Yep.
though.
So we are open to debate. Councillor Follows, why don't you sum up?
Well, I'm not summing up. I'm doing my seconding. I'm only
Yes,
going to say
sorry.
a couple of points. I think almost everything has been covered. Just a few bits I want to just pick up on stray elements of this. I'm sure Liz has a few more. I do respect the opinions of all members, especially with those with legal qualifications, and indeed there's a variety of qualifications and experience across the chamber. And I specifically respect the legal opinion of Councillor Goodridge, but equally with the greatest of respect to Councillor Ward, I'm unable to put that opinion above that of serving judges working in this field. I'm also unable to put it above those who are currently opining on this in the High Court. I'm also unable to put it above our planning officers, our qualified planning officers, and our qualified legal counsel, one of which is our deputy monitoring officer sitting at the dais. So whilst I respect the opinion of members, Councillor Goodridge is not qualified to advise council on these matters. Our officers are, and our legal advice is. And that is why I put their primacy above a member whilst respecting that member's experience in the subject matter. Councillor Hess, I agree with you in a number of issues here, but Councillor Townsend has already stated this as well. There is some conflation as to some of the issues, and I would also advise against conflating individual cases and establishing trends. A lot of these cases are quite bespoke. There are quite specific issues with each of them, and to establish one issue as if impacting another resident is a little bit difficult to do in a few cases, as has been clear looking at some of the discretionary review applications. The bit I just wanted to add before I stop, though, is I've said several times I really do urge members of the public to apply for the discretionary review, and I'm observing within the opposition a little mini division between the political councillors and then the long-standing ones that have been here. The long-standing ones respect the law, in all honesty. I see Councillor Coburn, I see Councillor Goodridge, I see Councillor Martin and others in planning committees. I see them here and I see in other places that still EWG being one of them. I know they accept and respect the primacy of the rule of law, and I see it sometimes, I see the discomfort sometimes in your faces and in your actions when you're being asked by the more political individuals to do something that doesn't sit well with you. And I see that a little bit in some of this. But where I want to go with this is that I believe very strongly, having spoken to a number of these residents myself, that there are a group of people who are scaring some of these residents out of applying for the discretionary review process. And Councillor Hess, please do correct me if I'm wrong, and if you can find one later, do tell me. There isn't a legal process anywhere that has an unlimited right of appeal forever. I mean, everything has a limit. I mean, in respect, the discretionary review is a form of appeal beyond the other avenues of appeal that already exist. There does have to be a point where there is no further appeal. And to say that it's somehow some kind of tyrannical instrument because it doesn't allow an unlimited right of appeal, I don't believe is compatible with almost any other part of the legal system in the United Kingdom or Western civilization in general. But my final point, just to reiterate, there are a number of members of the public who have been scared out of applying for this discretionary review. And I do believe strongly there are motivations of the people who are scaring them out of doing it. So please, members of the public who are present, who might be watching this elsewhere, the council recognises its ability to act in a discretionary capacity. It understands the limits of that discretion, and it understands the maximum amount of council error it can manage through that discretion. What it cannot do is withdraw liability notices, as multiple legal opinions and now this Bracknell Forest versus Luck ruling has established. You do not need to be scared of applying for this review. You can go through this review in good faith, have your case assessed to the maximum level that the law allows us to do, and we will work with you in that process. Please do not be scared out of applying by those who have another motive to prevent you doing so. Madam Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. And remember, we're asking, Councillor Austin, you were asking to be heard in silence, and I'm asking for the others to be heard in silence equally. Apologies, Councillor Townsend. It is you who has a right of reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think most of everything has been said. I just would like to reiterate a couple of points because I need them to go in. The discretionary review, this comes on top of, if people don't agree with the SIL decision, they can then go to appeal. They can then go to the Evaluation Office, they can go to the Ombudsman, they can now go to a discretionary review. I do not want people to feel that there is just one thing that people can do. There are lots of things under the formal appeal process which is written into the SIL legislation, and we have introduced a discretionary review on top. Councillor Hess was mentioning about error. We, for very, very particular reasons, have not narrowed down what error is. You can apply if you think you weren't given enough information or whatever. Error has not been defined, and that is on purpose, and we've said it in this chamber I don't know how many times. Please get it in your heads. It's not defined on purpose. If you feel there was an error, just apply. And also it's been talked about how long things are taking. Well, the thing is that the legal review obviously is provided to Claire, who is working so hard on this. Claire may look at that legal review. She has got the opportunity to review that. The decision lies with her. Of course, it doesn't lie with the external person. They are providing their advice. The decision lies with Claire. She may come to a different decision, but that is after a full scrutiny of that report, and a full scrutiny of the evidence. Is it a 5-minute thing? No, it is not. There are hundreds of things she needs to look through. So if it's not quick enough for you, that's because we're taking our time and we are doing it properly. And I can't tell you, that we have used discretion. We have not sought payments where it has not been proportionate or expedient to do so. We have not done that. So to imply that we are acting willy-nilly and, and not using our discretion is actually completely and utterly incorrect. And I can't tell you how often that discretion is used on behalf of this council in enforcement, not in withdrawing liability notices, which we all know. Please, if you haven't learnt anything tonight, we cannot just withdraw a liability notice because we want to. I would like to thank everybody on the EWG, on the working group, that for their hard work, and I mean that sincerely. They came to it with open minds. They really worked hard, and we did it quickly. And I know there's been people saying, "Oh, it hasn't been done quickly enough." We did that work really quickly. We got through a lot of stuff. We really did, and we worked hard and we worked collaboratively. And I was really proud of that work, and I was really proud of every member from every group that came to that with an open mind and really listened and made some good decisions. Now, I don't mind if there's an independent, but I personally, that's a decision that's been made that can be looked at by the executive. But I am proud of that work that was done, and it was honest work, and it was in-depth work, and it was good work. And I think what everybody left there was thinking that we had tried our best in very difficult circumstances to try and make the best review process that we could to help people. And I would again reiterate what the leader has said. Please apply. If you think you have any kind of problem with your charging of SIL, then apply for a discretionary review. It has been kept broad on purpose. Just apply. There are people here I've seen month after month over that year who I've met who have still not applied, even though we've had discussions, in-depth discussions with them. So the delay is not on our side, Madam Mayor. Please, can we just reiterate that and do what's best for our residents? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. So we are going to vote on the amended motion. Is everybody happy to do it electronically? Councillor Austin,
Please may I ask for a recorded vote?
do you have the required number? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I find that we seem to have gone round and round in circles.
Thank you. You are voting on the substantive motion, which is now the motion that Councillor Townsend originally moved with the addition of E, which is on the sheet of paper in front of you.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
So to clarify, Councillor Austin's paragraph E has been added to the original
That is how we
Townsend
voted
motion.
on the amendment.
Sorry, E becomes E, are you saying? E becomes,
When E from the amendment becomes a part of substantive motion, it becomes E on the substantive, yeah?
excellent.
If members are ready, I'll call the vote. Councillor Austin.
4.
Councillor Barker Lomax. 4. Councillor Beeman.
4.
Councillor Busby.
4.
Councillor Cavalieri.
4.
Councillor Coburn.
4.
Councillor Crowe. 4. Councillor Davidson. 4. Councillor Denis. 4. Councillor Deuce.
4.
Councillor Earwaker.
4.
Councillor Fairclough.
4.
Councillor Follows.
4.
Councillor Gale. 4. Councillor Goodridge.
4.
Councillor Hess. 4. Councillor Higgins.
4.
Councillor Hussaini.
4.
Councillor Hyman.
4.
Councillor Keane. 4. Councillor Keel. 4. Councillor Long. 4. Councillor MacLeod.
4.
Councillor Martin.
4.
Councillor Merriweather. 4. Councillor Mirrlees.
4.
Councillor Monroe.
4.
Councillor Murray.
4.
Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Ken Reid.
4.
Councillor Ruth Reid.
4.
Councillor Paul Rivers.
4.
Councillor Penny Rivers. 4. Councillor Rubini.
4.
Councillor Spence.
4.
Councillor Steiger. Councillor Sullivan. 4. Councillor Townsend. Liz Townsend.
Sorry, 4.
Councillor Philip Townsend. Councillor Ward.
4.
Councillor Weldon. And Councillor Williams.
4.
That's unanimous, Chair.
That is unanimous, therefore carried. As it is after 9 o'clock, I'm going to propose we have a 5-minute break for you all, and then we come back to agenda item number 6. So we come to agenda item number 6, which is questions by members. There are 7 questions. And we'll take the questions and the answers as read, apart from one. And I'll just ask each person if they have a supplementary. Councillor Austin.
Thank you. This is about Farnham parking. Obviously, we know that in December, we put forward a motion for an extension of that. In January, it's now the 27th of January, and I've heard absolutely nothing. The Surrey leader has not received any feedback or comment about it, and he would like to, as would I. So please, can you confirm what's happening with the extension of the discount scheme? We've lost a month. Thanks.
Councillor Fairclough.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Austin. I think there was a question there. Right, so we haven't lost a month at all. We've quite the opposite. A verbal report was presented at the executive briefing this morning, and the paper from which it was taken was circulated to the executive after that meeting. The report contained a number of observations and outline recommendations, not least that this council has a duty to support all of its towns and businesses, all of whom are facing considerable economic pressures, and many of which are also suffering the effects of ongoing roadworks. Our evaluation is that the £1 after 1 p.m. offer had limited direct benefits during December. It did, however, provide a positive PR message that Farnham was open again. We suspect that any benefits of that message have been lost with the closure of the borough in January. However, we require confirmation from third parties such as the Farnham bid in terms of footfall and their analysis from their members. In the meantime, we are actively considering and evaluating alternative potential offers. Any future activity must consider how we can facilitate behavioural change. At the moment, average dwell time, this was in November, for which is the most recent information we have from the bid. At the moment in Farnham, the average dwell time is 37 minutes. More than 75% of visitors stay for 1 hour or less. Unfortunately, that is of little help to our businesses, whether they are in Farnham, Cranley, Godalming or Hazelmere. Any activity that we do should encourage visitors to stay longer and ideally spend more in all of our towns. And also, one of the lessons that we have learned, and this comes from conversations with the businesses and the bid itself, is that any activity must also be able to benefit from a coordinated communication campaign. Now, I believe that members are aware that we have a legal requirement to, whenever we make any adaptation of our parking charges, we have to provide 21 days working notice in a printed media of those changes. And again, we have to, anything we do, we'll have to abide by that law. We have listened and we have learned from the £1 after 1 p.m. offer, and after consideration this morning, the executive has charged officers with delivering something even better. We aim to do so before making any further changes to parking charges. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Williams, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to thank the leader for his clear response on the progress of the Guildford Godalming Greenway at pace, as he puts it, on the Guildford side of the border. Could he confirm whether there are any remaining funding, legal or land ownership matters still to be resolved before works can begin on the Waverley side? And if so, what the revised timetable for commencement is? And further, in relation to the Godalming Gateway project, could the leader set out what specific measures are now being proposed to manage the projected increase in cycle traffic through the Phillips Memorial Park, given that the original public consultation supported path improvements within the park, which have, in terms of the leader's response, been vetoed.
Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Williams, for your question. Supplementary question, I should say. In regards to the Surrey County Council highways works that are currently in the Shalford division of Surrey County Council, stretching into the Godalming North division of Waverley's territory, as far as I'm aware, they are on track to do what they need to do. I will need to go and check subsequently with the member for Godalming North, Councillor Penny Rivers, and also the cabinet member for highways, who is also the ward member for Shalford. As in terms of the sections in places like the park, I have asked officers to properly now look at alternative options, of which I do believe there are a number of them. I also consider it a reasonable possibility that there might not be a viable option through the centre of Godalming that does not cause some kind of hazard or public safety matter, but we'll be asking officers to assess it on those basis. Whilst I want to support cycling as much as possible, as most of you know here, I can drive, but I don't really do it very often. Probably a good thing for everybody. I do also cycle, and I'm keen to ensure that cyclists and walkers are able to access our town centre effectively through the infrastructure being delivered on the Surrey County Council side. That being said, Councillor Juice, as portfolio holder, I'm sure will take that forward with officers. But I'm not intending at any point to allow the cycle route to go through Phillips Memorial Park for the reasons outlined in my first question. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Williams, do you have another supplementary?
Well, that's actually not answered the question about the increased volume of cycle traffic through the park.
I'm happy to get back to Councillor Williams by email, but we would request that he send me evidence of the increased cycle traffic to support my answering his statement.
So, thank you. Question 3. Is there a supplementary on that one?
No, Madam Mayor, I don't have a supplementary question. I'd just like to thank the leader for a positive and helpful response on this important issue, and I'm delighted about the partnership with the University of Surrey.
And on question 4, Councillor Williams, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you. Again, I'd like to thank the leader for his response, but I do want to add a supplementary here. Given that one purpose of EPR funding is to support local authorities in moving towards more separated waste collections to improve sustainability and be more consistent with the waste hierarchy, could he explain what specific proposals or preparatory work Waverley has undertaken to adapt our waste collection service in readiness for these changes? For example, are options under active consideration to introduce separate paper and card collections? And if so, what indicative timeline is envisaged?
Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor Williams. I will modify those things to the detriment of residents over my dead body, or in case somebody forces me to do it by law. And the government do intend on doing some of these things by law, and that will compel local authorities to do it. I don't tend to jump through legal hoops that I don't agree with before I have to, and I'm sure most members here will agree with that position. I think that the government's position is overly complicated for recycling, and I do think that the government should think about what they're doing here, because we want to encourage as many residents to recycle as possible. The government have not thought about how bins work in flats. They've not thought about how they work in narrow conditions, in roads which have access issues, or any of these other things before publishing draft legislation on the subject. And as such, Waverley will wait until others who have rushed into this have worked out the kinks or are forced to by law before we have to. And that is my final position on that going forward. And that will be the policy of the executive here. And I'm sure, as they have also given this opinion, in Guildford. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Williams, do you have a supplementary on question 5?
On question 5, I thank again the leader for his response. But now that the formal playground strategy will not be taken forward as planned. Could he explain how the council will ensure that future playground upgrades or new facilities funded through SIL or Section 106 both reflect current best practice in inclusive play and are effectively delivered and maintained by Waverley's specialist playgrounds team, rather than being owned and controlled by developers or external bodies, particularly in the context of the growing number of new developments across the borough?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for your supplementary question, Councillor Williams. You and I both agree on the fact that the way developers do leaps and laps in developments and the way they design them and how they design them appears to be completely at odds often with how we would run them as a park. There's also issues in some cases about access to those parks where there's almost proprietary, you have to live in this particular development in order to access the park, and it puts groups of residents against each other. And I just don't love how it goes. That's in planning policy though, and one of the many things I'm sure people across this room object to about national planning policy. For the remaining life of Waverley, as was in my original response, I am quite keen that all and any and all money to do with parks and leisure be spent on the provision of parks and leisure. And there's two reasons for that. Firstly, I don't believe spending money on scoping and providing a strategic document for the last remaining months of Waverley Borough Council's life is an effective use of taxpayers' money, particularly when it could be spent on parks. And I also have absolutely no faith, having a vague idea at least of the future budget and capital programme of the West Surrey Unitary, that even if it wants to spend all of its time and energy on doing things like parks, whether it's going to have the capacity to do so. So I'm taking this opportunity to spend Waverley money, public money, on parks directly, rather than talking about parks, whilst we have the capacity to do it as Waverley Borough Council. And again, that is, I hope, a position that most members in this room will agree and understand.
Thank you. Question number 6 is from Councillor Martin. Do you have a supplementary?
Oh, thank you. Yes, please, Madam Mayor. I was going to ask a question about the length of time that many of the cases that were referred to are taking, but we dealt with that in the debate that we had, although to my view, not satisfactorily. I wish they could be faster. My secondary question was the other point that was referred to during the course of that debate regarding Duncan Lewis solicitors representing a Waverley resident. And in that, it says in this report of public law report, it says that Duncan Lewis solicitors maintain that the council's new decision contradicted its earlier admissions and reintroduced points it had already accepted were wrong. Officials, meaning Waverley officials, withdrew all SIL liability notices relating to the development, marking a complete victory for the client. Just wondering whether that case is within or outside of the various cases, or the 4 cases that are before the independent assessor, and what the status of that is, and when we will hear something about it from Waverley. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Liz Townsend.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for your supplementary question. Councillor Martin, I'll have to get back to you on email from that, and because I need some input from the head of planning. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we come to question number 7 from Councillor Hussaini, which I believe, Councillor Follows, you're going to read your answer.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and thank you very much, Councillor Hussaini, for your question. In terms of my response, we have appointed a specialist consultant team to carry out the first phase of work on Broadwater Park. This initial work is focused on understanding how best to address the landfill on the site, and at the same time how we can create high quality accessible green space and leisure facilities for residents. This phase will result in an options appraisal, which will allow the council to consider different approaches before any decisions are made. In the next year's draft budget papers, there is an allocation for further funding for Broadwater. ONS will have noted this yesterday, I'm sure. This is not a commitment to spend at this stage, but a prudent allowance for potential future work, and should members wish to move forward to a more detailed design and planning application that would follow. Any funding would only be drawn down at the appropriate time and would be subject to the council's usual governance and approval processes. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Hussaini, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. It's 7 years now since the former Broadwater Golf Club has been closed. 3 years since the public was asked what facilities they would like to see at the park. And according to the timeline you put forward in public last year, it will be a whopping 11 years between the closure of the golf club and the completion of the new facilities. I'm sorry, but after 7 years of inaction, the public will be just as disappointed as I am with the answer I've been given. We are appointing consultants to understand how to address the landfill. Really? 7 years on? At a meeting last night, Broadwater Park was described as a priority project.
Councillor Hussaini, is there a question?
Yes, I'm coming to it. At a meeting last night, Broadwater Park was described as a priority project, yet your answer to my question lacks any certainty, stating that the allocated funds for further works are not a commitment.
Is there
to
a question,
spend.
Madam Mayor?
So can we have some certainty tonight? Will any physical building works commence before the dissolution of Waverley in 2027? And how will the leader ensure the project is not stalled with the move to West Surrey Unitary?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There's an opportunity to deal with a few things in this, so I might as well take it. 7 years since we undid the dubious decision the Conservatives made to offer a massive, great big part of Godalming at 80%. This is what, for 80 years, at about a quarter of the market rent that it was due. We then hit, of course, a legal dispute which Waverley won, but not after one but two call-ins from the Conservatives who attempted to stop it. And then, of course, we hit COVID. So in terms of legal issues, I think we can probably understand that there might have been some issues on the other side of the benches here that might have contributed to that. I think we should also probably remind everybody, if they hadn't forgotten, that needing to do things in a rush and guaranteeing that we do them before LGR is not something I wanted or voted for. You, on the other hand, did. So perhaps you might wish to answer your own question in public about why LGR acts as a constraint now upon Waverley Borough Council to act. Because if you don't understand that, I do not know why you voted to support unitarisation as a concept and the two unitary proposal put forward by the county, which you did on this occasion at Waverley Borough Council, as did your colleagues, not just here, but at Surrey County Council, at Runnymede, at Woking, at Spelthorne, at Guildford, everywhere. All the Conservatives all voted for this big mega unitary. So I could sit here and go, well, you've made your bed, now you've got to lie in it. But of course, what I actually represent is residents and not a random group of political people. So going forward, Waverley Borough Council is doing the works that it has to do by law. And we've done the environmental monitoring over the course of the last year. We can't decide not to do that. We can't skip doing it. We can't avoid doing the reports. We can't pretend that the Environment Agency doesn't exist because it's inconvenient. We have to do these things. So we can't just skip them. What you'll see in the next few weeks is an outline programme for how this is delivered. Consultants have to be done to do the landfill capping because it is not something that the council maintains permanent expertise to deliver. No council, no borough council does. I will get back to you by email with the rest of it because I think members want to carry on. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Well, with that in mind, it is 25 to 10. And because we possibly won't get through all the business tonight, I'm using my discretion to move agenda item number 11 up the order to being the next piece of business. So item 11 is the new affordable housing delivery Chiddingfold supplementary budget allocation. Are there any questions on the clarity of this before we start? None. Councillor Crowe, would you like to move the motion, please?
Yes, thank you very much. I'm obviously favourite. As you all know from your papers, we're delivering 26 new affordable homes across 5 sites in Chiddingfold, of which 2 are completed and the remaining 24 are scheduled for completion in February this year. The scheme has been dogged by various problems, including the initial contractor going into administration in 2022, delayed service diversions, unforeseen utility process delays, unforeseen builders' works linked to additional utility requirements and subsequent costs, adverse weather, and an extension of time claims associated with all the above. All these issues have been outside Waverley's control, but notwithstanding, progress must be maintained on this development. So as a result, and to ensure completion of the remaining 24 homes, we have here a request for further funding as outlined in section 2 and a recommendation to support option 4 to approve the recommendations to use additional internal and external sources to complete the scheme. You'll see, however, in the supplementary paper that you received yesterday and or today, that there has also been a bid submitted to Homes England, and on the 15th of January, Homes England confirmed that Waverley has been approved as an investment partner. That is a status which is used to determine which organisations are eligible to receive grant funding. And I'm very pleased to report that on the 19th of January, Homes England confirmed the award of £621,000 in grant funding from the Affordable Homes Programme 2021 to 2026. This is fantastic news, obviously, but there are still certain contractual matters and key delivery milestones to finalise before receiving the funding. So for this reason, to ensure that we can continue with the development at pace, we are nonetheless still asking that Council approves the allocation of the supplementary budget as outlined in 2.1 and support option 4 this evening. These are fantastic homes. We need these homes, so I urge you to accept the recommendation and note as well the excellent funding news outlined in the supplementary paper. Thank you.
I forgot to ask if you had a seconder. I
Please
believe you
second,
had.
Madam Mayor. You do.
And would you like to reserve your right to speak now?
I will reserve.
Reserve. Councillor Hyman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, obviously we've got to complete this now. It's not 90% of the way there. There's still a lot of stuff to be done, but a lot of it is utility problems and whatever, not our officers' fault. But the amount of money we keep getting, all these schemes coming back to us because prices have gone up. Well, that's why we had contingency in the first place. You know, every scheme when it comes to us in the first place has contingency in there to take care of if things cost a bit more or whatever, things that might happen. And yet all the time now we're finding in very large, and we know there have been price increases, but it is worrying. With this one in particular, the open public papers that we've got here tell us that we got it was 9.3 million and we've got another £500,000 on top. So we're looking at £10 million altogether. 26 homes, well, that's a gain of 16 because 10 are being demolished to produce the 26. So we're actually gaining 16 homes for 10 million, which is a lot of money when you consider that we're providing the land as well. The land is free, so given free land, £600,000 plus for each home that's built on that land in costs. It is a lot of money and we really need to look at them. So what disappoints me really in these papers, because I'd like to understand them, maybe that isn't such a bad thing. Houses aren't cheap. But we could probably buy them cheaper on the open market, and the question is, should we be doing so? I'm disappointed there's no information in the officer report in respect of the size of the homes that were demolished, that we've lost, and the size of the homes that are being built, so we can compare what we're losing with what we're gaining and how much it's costing. We're not at the end of this, and there might be more to spend, but we really do need to, even if it's just for our new West Surrey Council to learn from our mistakes, so to speak. We're spending an awful lot of money per home here, and I'm not entirely certain. I certainly have to be concerned. I think, that we could be getting a lot better value for and saving ourselves a lot of hassle as well. If we weren't building on garage sites and all that sort of thing, whatever it is, maybe we could just have the garages and go and buy the things elsewhere and save a lot of money. So, but we don't know unless we get the information. I think we should have more information. I support the motion, of course, because we've got to finish it off.
Thank you, Councillor Austin.
Thank you. So just kicking off, we all, I'm sure, support delivery of these affordable houses in Chiddingfold. That overriding feeling, I think, would be supported by all of my council group, certainly. But once again, we are here with the council returning for more what they call cost increasing incidents. Now, it's interesting to note here, one of them, 11.2, states the option is to reduce the overall scope of the project. I'd like to bear that in mind in a month or two when we're talking about Cranley, where we weren't offered that opportunity, certainly in ONS. Now, we're looking at something, I must say, my concern here is really about the reports. There is so much that is not in the reports that I need in order to be able to make this decision, and it is sadly lacking. The Chiddingfold scheme, it says, has suffered from these issues caused by diversions, utility delays, requirements, adverse weather, extension of time claims, but there's no mention of in the reports of how much was attributable to each of those reasons. That's really important for me in my decision making as to whether to approve that or not, because it's important that we understand our costs being controlled as this project goes through. I would like to also just, so I went back to the executive report, thought, well, I'll see if that's got any more detail in it. And it didn't give much more away, otherwise only alluding to something to do with the previous contractor going bust. Now, it says the remaining sites in the executive report, they're due to be completed in March, but the report to us in council states February. If we are, on a timing issue, we're needing 481k to complete the project in the next 30 days. Is this not a bit late to council as well? Should it not have come to us before? I mean, I asked officers for detail on all of the above, actually, not least because I was concerned about the payback periods extending out significantly to nearly half a century. And I received an email, well, I just saw it at 6:45. It arrived at 6:20 something. And so I haven't had a chance to look at it, the detail of those numbers. Obviously, you all haven't had a chance to look at that either. So I personally, while I support Chiddingfold schemes, I also very strongly on behalf of the taxpayer want to make sure that costs are controlled and contracts are monitored properly. And I don't have that information at all, anywhere near enough information to make a decision. So I will be abstaining or voting against. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just wanted to say how pleased I am that these homes are now coming to fruition. It's been a very long, complex project across multiple sites, all of which have proved challenging in their own way, much of which is set out in the report. None of this has been straightforward, but from what I've seen, these challenges have been well managed, and ultimately these homes will be an exceptional addition to our housing stock, both in terms of their quality and also their environmental credentials. So I would like to thank Louise and Mark and everyone in the housing development team for the huge amount of work that has gone into getting to this point, and actually to the main contractor, who have looked around the two that have been completed, and they are really high standard. Of course, final thank you to nearby residents, including our tenants, who have been really incredibly patient throughout what has been a longer period than anybody imagined. So the supplementary budget in front of us is about getting these homes over the finishing line. It's a prudent and precautionary step to ensure the scheme can now be completed without delay. Very welcome news, of course, that Homes England funding has been secured, but officers are rightly ensuring that the scheme's completion is not reliant on external funding or the timing of that funding. So I'm delighted to support the recommendation. Nobody likes increased costs, but I think the report does indicate why that's been the case, and as I say, complex project across the village. But need to get it finished now and get families into these much needed affordable homes as soon as possible.
Thank you, Councillor Merriweather.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I noted Councillor Hyman's comments, numbers, pounds, sizes. I was surprised he didn't mention quality, because that is an important factor in when we build houses fit for our tenants, which reminds me to remind Councillor Austin that the taxpayer does not fund our council houses. Our council houses are fully financed by our tenants, who pay their rent for the operation, maintenance, construction, repairs, and everything. The taxpayer is ring-fenced out of that equation. I was also, nobody likes to see increased costs. I was reminded, though, that when this was approved on the 13th of December 2022, I think we and the rest of the country were still reeling from the Liz Truss budget just weeks before in 2022, but we're still living with the consequences of. And that, that is something, I can see our Conservative friends smiling. It's not funny at all. It has damaged our economy and we're still reeling from the consequences of that. Councillor Hyman also suggested that an option here is to buy houses on the open market. We do both. It's not one or the other. We do buy houses on the open market. We buy them under Section 106 agreements. And we do both at the same time. It's not either or. Either way, we cannot build quality homes for our residents fast enough. I was interested also on the comments that we need to control costs. It would be much nicer if we could exercise a lot more control over the privatised utilities, who seem to frustrate us at every turn when we actually try to get things done, and not only in terms of building new homes like this, but everything else with the flooding and the other things that were going on. But I just want to join Councillor Busby in thanking the team for delivering this. I do believe that we have an expert independent employers agent who has tested all these numbers and given us the independent verification that we need. And even more thrilled to bits that Homes England have voted or decided with their money to join us in this. That is a vote of confidence in us that I think we should all be proud of.
Thank you. I'm hoping we have three other speakers. Well, I beg your pardon, I try to listen to the speakers. So we have Councillor Liz Townsend, Councillor Williams, and then Councillor Martin.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, this is totally in line with our corporate strategy, and I'm very proud of the houses that we're building in Chiddingfold, and they're going to be a great asset to that community. I'm afraid it's, this has come to the council before. This isn't the first time. There's been exempt annexes on it as well. So, there's a lots of stuff that Councillor Austin could have looked back, and I'm very glad that Mark Merriweather mentioned that, this is not, I mean, after all these years, a councillor should know the difference between the HRA and that is not taxpayers that are paying for that. Costs have gone up, that's, just inevitable, as we said, with the Liz Truss budget, with war in Ukraine, with tariffs, and unfortunately prices have increased. And to be honest, Councillor Austin should be aware of that in her, the line sort of in the area that she has been involved with before in the building world, that she should be aware that, those kind of costs have gone up hugely. In fact, some areas for steel, they are talking about 50% increases. So I think, the extra money from Homes England in the report, it clearly states that reduces the average payback period as well. So it's not half a century at all. It's actually in your papers at 12.1.3. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Austin talks about concerns about funding, and yes, I'm concerned about funding. I'm concerned about the funding that this council has to pay year on year on year on a loan, as interest on a loan to buy back homes which we already own. That is something which, if that were released, would enable us to fund even more social housing. And Councillor Crowe explained why the funding is necessary and we need to ensure the scheme goes ahead with the great news shared with us about the Homes England grant. And this item matters because it moves us beyond aspiration and into delivery. What we have got before us is a practical proposal to ensure much needed homes, sustainable homes, which have long been promised, particularly in Chiddingfold, are actually completed and made available to local people. It reflects a commitment to if you like, community sustainability, enabling people to remain close to their families, their work, and their support networks. It supports wider objectives around reducing homelessness, improving well-being, and strengthening rural communities. So I'm strongly supportive of the proposal, and I know that most members in this chamber will recognise its significance in addressing one of the most challenging issues affecting Waverley today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Thank you. Well, I'm not going to vote against this, but I do have a lot of concerns. I do, of course, welcome the £621,000 grant from Homes England. That's great. Just a couple of points. In paragraph 1.1, it says that the remaining 24 homes will be completed and handed over to the council by February 2026. So these homes are pretty much finished and done. So I'm not sure whether this, in fact, is a sort of retrospective amount of money that we are being asked to approve. I do note on page 117 the payback periods that are talked about. And of course, we get the usual thing of the payback periods, the length of time it takes for the investment of the project to recover its initial costs. And then again, we must consider the non-financial benefits and the wider social, economic and strategic benefits. I hear all of that, but I'm still very disappointed that we have such long payback periods, and I don't like them. And even if we got money from Homes England, I mean, we can't just wipe that away. That ought to go into the payback period. And I think the payback period is very long. And I get very amused at Councillor Merryweather's continual reference to Liz Truss many years ago now. The damage that this left-wing Labour government has done to this country is infinitely greater than anything Liz Truss has done.
Thank you, Peter.
And I just think we should recognise and understand that.
It's been a long evening. It's, well,
I'm sorry, other councillors have made political comments. I object to being told that I can't.
Peter.
Right.
I'm going to just, again, exercise my discretion. I want to know what you're going to say.
Fine, thank you. But I've finished what I'm going to say. Thank you very much.
Councillor Pollis, did you want to speak?
Very, very quickly. Hey, I don't love long payback periods either. I wish they could be shorter, but I don't get to decide the economic universe that we live in and have to work in. And, you know, I literally and figuratively am in the centre, both politically and where I am right now. And one of the things that means is that I can be annoyed at both the current government and the previous one for causing lots of problems in this country. And unlike some people much further to the right of most of the people in this room, I'm not proposing the overthrow of the state or the, you know, racially abusing people or any other kind of madness. What I am wanting to do is build houses for people that need them. So thank you, Councillor Busby, for your comments, and I believe they actually represent a really true and realistic interpretation of what's actually happened on the ground. My thanks also to Councillor Crowe and her team, especially Louisa Blundell and all those who've worked on the site itself to build the thing, and also the subsequent negotiations with Homes England. Now, having spent a decent proportion of the last 2 weeks dealing with just one set of Thames Water and highway issues on infrastructure they already possess, we are also starting to see with this site and a few other sites that where Thames Water, and in some cases Surrey Highways, but definitely Thames Water, where they're doing new connections and new utility installations, delays and other issues with that part of their programme also have knock-on effects to us. Now, we've established that this has been a problem for a little while. It seems to be a growing problem, and I think we're probably going to need to be a little bit clearer now about forecasting and assuming those sorts of problems when we start to budget our projects. One of the other bits of casework that stood out for me has been assisting a resident over a serious issue in their private sector rented accommodation this week. And actually the council, having a private sector housing team, has also been able to engage with and assist that resident. And one of the easiest things for us to do to help that resident would be to have more social housing so that we could house them ourselves in really good additional accommodation owned and managed by Waverley Borough Council and paid for, of course, as Councillor Mark Merryweather has stated, by Waverley tenants and not the taxpayer at large. They need good homes, they need good quality homes for the reasons I've said and many, many others. The Homes England news is, of course, as Councillor Merryweather said, a vote of confidence in what we're doing. And having spent some time in Chiddingfold over Christmas, I am extremely proud of the quality of what we have built there. And I'm sure those who live in the homes will be exceedingly happy with them. The last bit I'll say before I stop is that the last email I received about 2 hours ago was from a resident who recently moved into one of our new houses at Oxford Ridge. And I immediately saw the name because it's somebody who's done a lot of casework, shall we say, a frequent flyer. And I thought, oh dear, what has happened with her move? And she sent me some photos and she told me how thrilled, how fantastic she thought it was, how smooth the handover's been, how the issues that she thought wouldn't be dealt with by the council were dealt with before she even raised them. Some of them, there was a chap there on a Sunday morning dealing with some of the issues that were there in the garden. She is very, very happy, and I want to make sure more residents have that experience. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Crowe.
Thank you very much, everyone, for all the comments. I too want to thank Louisa and the team. This has been a really complicated development, as we've said, across 5 sites. But it's been a very essential development. It's been something that is absolutely essential to keep one of our important villages thriving for the future. So I commend it to us all. Thank you.
Thank you. So when lights show, please vote.
Lights aren't working. Can we do it by scent?
Please show whether you're in favour of the recommendation.
Who's not voting?
I will do that. Should we do that?
Who's against?
And those against? And those who are abstaining?
1, 2, 3, 4 abstentions.
So that is carried. Now we have some good news and some bad news and some great news. Because we have decided that it's very nearly 10 o'clock. So the good news is we're going to stop tonight. The bad news is that we'll come back on the 17th of February. The great news is that, Paul Rivers, have you got a flyer to show? There are many of you in this room who have not put in a team for the quiz night on the 13th of February. If you are here, all of you are here for this fun evening, may I assure you that the 13th of February will be true fun.
You do need to get them to vote.
And we have to vote on stopping. Should we do that by a show of hands? All in favour of stopping now? And those against? And
2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
And any abstentions?
That is carried.
That is carried.
There is a limit.